The water was supposed to be her escape. Isla had walked into the ocean at midnight, letting the waves pull her under, when iron hands locked around her waist and dragged her back to the surface. She gasped, choking on salt water, and found herself staring into eyes she'd spent 2 years trying to forget. Dark. Merciless. The same eyes that had pulled the trigger on that dock. "I've got you," he said, his voice cutting through her panic. But Dominic Castellano didn't have her. He had no idea who she really was. The girl who saw everything. The only witness to the execution that kept his empire standing. And now, he'd just saved her life. This is a story that will grip you from the very first word. If you want to know how a single moment can change everything, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view brings us closer to the next story. Isla Rivera had mastered the art of being invisible. For 2 years, she'd lived in the shadows. Different hair color, different name on her work badge, different city every few months. Miami was supposed to be temporary. Just another stop before she disappeared again. The luxury resort where she worked as a lifeguard was a playground for the rich and dangerous. She kept her head down, her eyes on the water, her past buried deep. During the day, she watched over privileged families who didn't see her. At night, she returned to her cramped studio apartment and tried not to dream about that dock. The memory always came back the same way. Moonlight on black water, the sound of a man begging, and then the shot. Clean. Final. She'd been walking home from her late shift at the marina, cutting through the private docks to save time. She shouldn't have been there. Neither should he. But Dominic Castellano had been there, standing over a body, his face illuminated for just 3 seconds as he'd turned. Their eyes had met across 30 feet of darkness. She'd run. He hadn't followed, probably assumed she was just a scared dock worker who wouldn't dare speak. He'd been right. Isla had learned early that survival meant silence. Now, she sat on the lifeguard tower, scanning the nearly empty beach. It was past midnight, technically off-duty, but sleep had become impossible lately. The feeling of being watched had intensified over the past week. Paranoia, she told herself. Just paranoia. The ocean stretched black and endless before her. Sometimes she wondered what it would be like to just walk in. Keep walking until the water made the decision for her. She climbed down from the tower, her bare feet sinking into cool sand. The resort was quiet. Most guests were at the casino or the clubs downtown. Just her and the waves and the weight of 2 years running. Isla walked to the water's edge, letting foam rush over her ankles. Then her knees. Then her waist. The ocean was warmer than she expected, welcoming almost. She kept walking. The current grabbed her faster than anticipated. One moment she was waist-deep, the next a wave pulled her under. Salt burned her throat. Her lungs screamed. This wasn't what she wanted. Panic flooded her system as she thrashed, but the riptide was stronger. Then hands, impossibly strong, locked around her ribcage and hauled her upward. She broke the surface gasping, coughing violently, her vision blurred by salt and terror. "I've got you. Stop fighting me." The voice was command and control, the kind that expected instant obedience. Isla went limp instinctively as he pulled her toward shore, one arm banded across her chest, his other hand cutting through the water with powerful strokes. When her knees hit sand, she collapsed forward, retching seawater. Large hands steadied her shoulders, then moved to check her pulse at her throat with clinical efficiency. "Breathe. Slow breaths. You're okay." Isla's vision cleared enough to look up, and her entire world stopped. Dominic Castellano crouched beside her, water streaming from his hair, his white dress shirt plastered to his chest. He'd lost his jacket somewhere in the ocean. His dark eyes scanned her face with intense focus, checking for signs of distress. He didn't recognize her. 2 years, different hair color, different context. She was just another drowning victim to him. "Can you speak?" His hand moved from her throat to her face, tilting her chin up. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, wiping away salt water. "Tell me your name." Isla's heart hammered so violently she thought it might burst. Every instinct screamed to run, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Up close, he was even more devastating than she remembered. Sharp jaw, olive skin, a thin scar above his left eyebrow. The kind of beautiful that came with extreme danger. "Isla," she whispered, giving him the fake name she'd been using. I'm okay." "You're not okay. You almost died." His voice carried an edge now, something between anger and concern. "What the hell were you thinking, going in alone at night?" Behind him, 3 men in dark suits appeared at the waterline, hands inside their jackets. His security. Of course he had security. Dominic glanced back. "Get the car. And find a blanket." One of them jogged toward the resort while the others maintained their perimeter, eyes scanning the empty beach for threats that didn't exist. They were protecting him. Always protecting him. "I work here," Isla managed, her voice steadier now. "I'm a lifeguard. The current was stronger than I thought." His eyes narrowed slightly. "A lifeguard who can't handle a riptide? Everyone makes mistakes." She tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Immediately, Dominic's arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her against his side. The contact sent electricity through her nervous system, fear and something far more dangerous. "Easy." His grip tightened, supporting her full weight effortlessly. "You're in shock." One of his men returned with a towel, luxury Egyptian cotton, probably stolen from the resort's penthouse suite. Dominic wrapped it around her shoulders, his movements surprisingly gentle for someone with his reputation. "Thank you," Isla said quietly, trying to step away. His arm remained locked around her waist. "I'm taking you to the hospital." "No." The word came out too sharp, too panicked. His eyes fixed on her face with new intensity. Isla forced herself to breathe, to sound normal. "I'm fine. Really. Just shaken up. I can't afford. The hospital is expensive and I don't have." "I'm not asking." The command was absolute. "You could have water in your lungs. You're getting checked." This was dangerous. Hospitals meant paperwork, records, her fake ID under scrutiny. But refusing would draw more suspicion. Dominic Castellano wasn't a man who accepted defiance. "The resort has a medical office," she tried. "The night nurse can." "The resort has a nurse who'll give you an aspirin and send you home." His hand moved to the small of her back, guiding her toward the parking lot where a black SUV now waited, engine running. "You're going to Mercy General. My personal physician will meet us there." Isla's mind raced. Every second in his presence was a risk. Every moment he looked at her was a chance he'd remember. But she was trapped in his orbit now, pulled by gravity she couldn't escape. As he helped her into the back seat of the SUV, his hand lingering at her elbow, Isla caught her reflection in the tinted window. Wet hair plastered to her skull, face pale, eyes too wide. She looked nothing like the girl on that dock 2 years ago. She looked exactly like someone with something to hide. Dominic slid in beside her, close enough that his shoulder pressed against hers. He smelled like expensive cologne mixed with ocean salt. "You're shaking," he observed, pulling the towel tighter around her shoulders. "I almost drowned," Isla said, forcing her voice to stay level. "I think shaking is normal." The corner of his mouth lifted, almost a smile but not quite. Most people thank their rescuer more enthusiastically. "Thank you." She met his eyes deliberately, hoping confidence would mask her terror. "You saved my life." Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of something she couldn't read. "Then don't waste it by walking into the ocean alone at midnight." The SUV pulled away from the resort, heading toward downtown Miami's lights. Isla watched the beach disappear in the side mirror, her sanctuary shrinking into the distance. She'd spent 2 years running from Dominic Castellano. Now she was trapped in his car, wrapped in his towel, saved by his hands. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so terrifying. In the driver's seat, one of his men spoke quietly into a phone. "Yes, sir. En route to Mercy. Approximately 12 minutes." Dominic's hand rested on the seat between them, close enough that she could see the scars on his knuckles. Fighter's hands. Killer's hands. The same hands that had just pulled her from death. "What were you really doing out there?" he asked suddenly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "And don't tell me you were testing the current." Isla's breath caught. His eyes were locked on her face, reading every micro-expression. This was what made him dangerous, not just the violence but the intelligence, the ability to see through lies. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "the water seems quieter than everything else." For a long moment he just looked at her. Then slowly he nodded. "I understand that better than you know." The SUV turned onto the highway, and Isla realized with sinking certainty that everything had just changed. She'd stayed hidden for 2 years through careful planning and constant movement. But fate, or whatever cruel force governed the universe, had just thrown her directly into the path of the one man who could destroy her. The man whose secret she carried like a loaded gun. The man who'd just saved her life. Mercy General's emergency room cleared the moment Dominic walked through the doors. A administrator appeared within seconds, her professional smile tight with nervousness. "Mr. Castellano, your physician is waiting in the executive suite." Isla wanted to disappear into the linoleum floor. Every staff member was staring, some openly, others pretending to work while their eyes tracked his movement. This was the power of his name. Instant recognition. Instant fear. "She needs a full respiratory evaluation," Dominic said, his hand still on Isla's back, guiding her toward the elevator. "Chest X-ray, blood oxygen levels, the complete protocol for near-drowning victims." "Of course, sir. Dr. Chen is ready." The elevator was mirrored on all sides. Isla caught multiple reflections of herself, small, shivering, dwarfed by Dominic's presence. His white shirt had dried in wrinkled patterns against his skin, ruined by salt water. He'd lost probably $2,000 saving her life and didn't seem to care. "You don't have to stay," Isla said as the doors closed. "I can manage from here. I pulled you out of the ocean." His eyes met hers in the mirror. "That makes you my responsibility until I know you're safe." "I'm not your responsibility. Tonight you are." The words settled between them with finality. The elevator opened onto a private floor, luxury suites designed for wealthy patients who demanded privacy. Dr. Chen waited in the hallway, a thin man in his 60s with careful eyes. "Mr. Castellano." He nodded respectfully, then turned to Isla. "Let's get you examined." The next hour passed in a blur of tests and questions. Dr. Chen was thorough but kind, listening to her lungs, checking her oxygen saturation, asking about dizziness and nausea. Dominic waited outside the exam room, but Isla could feel his presence through the door like a physical force. "Your lungs are clear," Dr. Chen finally announced. "No water aspiration. You're extremely lucky." He handed her a bottle of water. "Drink slowly. The salt water dehydrated you. Can I leave? I'd recommend overnight observation." "No." Isla stood, steadier now. "I need to get home." Dr. Chen glanced toward the door where Dominic waited. "Mr. Castellano was very insistent that we be thorough." "Mr. Castellano isn't my keeper." But even as she said it, Isla knew it wasn't entirely true anymore. He'd touched her life, pulled her from death, and men like Dominic didn't let go easily. When she stepped into the hallway, He was leaning against the wall, jacket somehow recovered and draped over his arm. Someone must have brought it from the beach. His phone was pressed to his ear, his voice low and sharp. "I don't care what excuse he gave you. Find him. I want answers by sunrise." He hung up and straightened when he saw her. "Dr. Chan says you're cleared." "I am. Thank you for all of this. But I should get back to the resort. It's 2 in the morning. You're not going back to the resort." He started walking toward the elevator, clearly expecting her to follow. "You're staying at my property tonight where someone can monitor you." Alarm bells screamed in Isla's head. "That's not necessary." "It's necessary to me." The elevator opened. He held his hand against the door, waiting. "You collapsed on the beach an hour ago. You live alone. I'm guessing by the way you panicked about hospital costs. If you have complications in the middle of the night, who's going to help you?" He had a point, which made it worse. Isla stepped into the elevator, her mind racing through options. "All of them bad." "I have a guest house on my property," Dominic continued as they descended. "Private. Secure. My housekeeper will be there within the hour to make sure you have everything you need." "Why are you doing this?" The question escaped before Isla could stop it. "You don't know me." The elevator reached the ground floor. Dominic looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his dark eyes. "Because 2 years ago, I failed to save someone. Tonight, I didn't fail. That matters to me." The confession was unexpected, a crack in his armor. Isla's chest tightened. Was he talking about the man on the dock? Or someone else? The SUV waited at the emergency entrance. As they pulled away from the hospital, Miami's lights blurred past the tinted windows. Isla memorized their route instinctively, always planning her escape. They drove north, away from the tourist areas, into Coral Gables where old money lived behind high walls. The SUV turned through ornate iron gates that opened automatically, then up a long driveway lined with royal palms. The main house was a sprawling Mediterranean villa, all white stucco and terracotta tiles, lit like a fortress. But Dominic directed the driver past the main house to a smaller structure partially hidden by tropical gardens. The guest house was still larger than any apartment Isla had ever rented. 2 stories, arched windows, a private entrance. "The security system is already active," Dominic said as one of his men opened her door. "No one gets in or out without my knowledge. The kitchen is stocked. If you need anything, there's a phone by the bed that connects directly to the main house." Isla climbed out, her bare feet touching cool pavers. She was still wearing her damp lifeguard uniform, red shorts and white tank top with the resort logo. Everything she owned was back in her studio apartment, including her go-bag with her real ID and emergency cash. "I need to get my things from home," she said. "My phone, my—" "Give me your address. I'll have someone collect what you need." Absolutely not. The last thing she needed was Dominic's men searching her apartment. "That's okay. I can manage without Isla." Her fake name sounded different in his mouth. "You're exhausted and you've been through trauma. Let me help you." This was how it started, she realized. The slow pull into his orbit. Small favors that became obligations. Kindness that transformed into control. She'd heard stories about Dominic Castellano, how he protected what he considered his. How he destroyed threats with calculated precision. She was both. Protected and threatening. Saved and dangerous. "Just for tonight," Isla said finally. "Tomorrow I go back to my normal life." Something flickered across his face, amusement maybe, or challenge. "Tomorrow," he agreed. But the word felt like a lie. He walked her to the guest-house door, his hand at her back again. That touch was becoming familiar too quickly. Inside, The space was beautiful. High ceilings, comfortable furniture, French doors opening onto a private patio. Neutral colors and expensive simplicity. "The bedroom is upstairs," Dominic said, moving through the space with the comfort of ownership. "Clean clothes in the closet. My sister stays here sometimes. Bathroom has everything you need." He paused at the bottom of the stairs, turning to face her. "Get some sleep. I'll check on you in the morning." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." His eyes held hers. "I want to." The statement hung between them, weighted with meaning she didn't want to examine. Isla nodded, not trusting her voice. Dominic moved toward the door, then stopped. "The ocean at midnight," he said quietly. "Were you trying to end things, or just escape them?" The question cut through her defenses like a blade. For a moment, Isla considered lying. But something in his expression, the way he looked at her like he understood dark water and desperate choices, made her tell a version of the truth. "I don't know any more." He nodded slowly, as if that answer made perfect sense. "Then maybe staying alive long enough to figure it out is worth trying." He left before she could respond, the door closing with a soft click. Through the window, Isla watched him walk back toward the main house, flanked by his security. Even in a ruined shirt, he moved like a king through his kingdom. She was alone in a stranger's house. A dangerous stranger. The man she'd spent 2 years hiding from. And somehow, impossibly, she'd never felt safer. That terrified her more than anything. Upstairs, the bedroom was pristine. The closet held exactly what he'd promised, women's clothes in various sizes. Isla chose a soft t-shirt and sleep shorts, then stood under the shower until the salt was finally gone from her skin. When she climbed into bed, exhaustion hit like a freight train. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw 2 images superimposed, Dominic pulling her from the waves, and Dominic standing over a body with a gun in his hand. The same man. Hero and killer. And she was the only person alive who knew both versions of him. Her phone, the burner she kept for emergencies, was back at her apartment. No way to contact anyone. No way to run. For the first time in 2 years, Isla was completely off the grid. Exactly where Dominic Castellano wanted her. Morning came with the smell of coffee and the sound of voices downstairs. Isla woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. Then it crashed back, the ocean, the rescue, the impossible situation she'd found herself in. She dressed quickly in borrowed clothes, designer jeans that fit surprisingly well and a soft cashmere sweater, and crept down the stairs. Through the French doors, she could see the main house, its windows glinting in early sunlight. The guest house door opened before she reached it. A woman in her 60s entered carrying a tray, elegant, silver-haired, with sharp eyes that assessed Isla instantly. "Good morning. I'm Rosa, Mr. Castellano's housekeeper." She set the tray on the dining table. "He asked me to bring you breakfast and make sure you had everything you needed." "That's kind, but unnecessary." Isla moved toward the door. "I should get back to. Mr. Castellano is waiting for you on the terrace." Rosa's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. "He'd like to speak with you before you leave." Of course he would. Isla followed Rosa through the gardens to a terraced area overlooking the bay. Dominic sat at a wrought iron table, already dressed in a fresh suit, his phone and an espresso in front of him. He looked up as she approached, something shifting in his expression. "The clothes fit," he observed. "Your sister has good taste." Isla remained standing, maintaining distance. "Thank you for the hospitality, but I really should." "Sit, please." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Have breakfast. Then we'll talk." Rosa had already disappeared back into the main house. Isla was alone with him in the garden, tropical birds calling from the trees. She sat, trying to project calm she didn't feel. "How are you feeling?" Dominic asked. "Fine. Completely recovered." "You're lying." He took a sip of espresso. "You're exhausted. You have shadows under your eyes like you haven't slept well in weeks. Maybe months." The observation was too accurate. Isla shifted uncomfortably. "I appreciate your concern, but I called the resort this morning." His eyes locked onto hers. "Spoke with the general manager. Your employment file is thin. You've only worked there for 6 weeks. Before that, nothing. No previous employers listed, no references, no permanent address. Just a P.O. box and a burner phone number." Ice flooded Isla's veins. "I move around a lot." "Why?" "That's personal. So is nearly drowning in front of me." Dominic leaned back in his chair, studying her with unnerving intensity. "Who are you running from, Isla?" The fake name sounded like an accusation now. Isla's heart hammered, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. "I'm not running from anyone. I just prefer privacy." "Privacy is one thing. Erasure is another." He set down his espresso cup with deliberate precision. "No social media, no credit cards, no lease in your name, no car registration. You're a ghost. People don't become ghosts unless they're hiding from something or someone." This was the moment. Isla could feel it, the decision point that would determine everything. If she ran now, she'd confirm his suspicions. If she stayed, she'd get pulled deeper into his orbit. But the way he watched her, the way he'd already started investigating, running might not even be an option anymore. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "The truth." He stood, moving around the table until he was leaning against it, closer to her. "And if you're in danger, I can help you." "You don't even know me." "I know you walked into the ocean at midnight. I know you were terrified when I suggested the hospital. I know you're alone and running from something bad enough that you've erased your entire identity." His voice softened slightly. "I know what it looks like when someone's surviving instead of living." The compassion in his tone was worse than suspicion. Isla felt something crack inside her chest. For 2 years, she'd been completely alone with her secret, carrying the weight of what she'd seen. And now this man, this dangerous, impossible man, was offering help she couldn't accept. "You can't help me," she said. "Try me. Mr. Castellano." "Dominic." He reached out, his fingers brushing her chin, tilting her face up toward his. The touch was gentle but commanding. When someone saves your life, you get to use their first name. Isla's breath caught. Up close, his eyes were even more intense, dark brown with flecks of gold, framed by thick lashes. The scar above his eyebrow was more visible in daylight. She wondered what had caused it. What other scars he carried beneath his expensive suits. "Dominic," she whispered, testing his name on her tongue. "You're being kind, and I'm grateful. But I can't involve you in my problems." "What if I want to be involved?" "Why would you want that?" His thumb traced along her jawline, barely touching. "Because from the moment I pulled you from that water, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. About the way you looked at me, like you were more afraid of being saved than drowning." He paused. "What are you so scared of, Isla?" "You," she thought. "I'm scared of you remembering. Of you realizing who I am. Of what happens when you connect the dots." But she couldn't say any of that. So instead, she did something reckless. She told him a different truth. "I witnessed something I shouldn't have. 2 years ago. Something that would get me killed if the wrong people knew." Dominic's expression didn't change, but his hand stilled against her face. "What did you see?" "A murder." The word fell between them like a stone into still water. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I saw someone kill someone else. And if they knew I was there, they'd kill me too. She was gambling everything on this partial confession, using the truth as camouflage, hoping he'd assume she witnessed some random crime, not his crime, not his execution on that dock. "Did you go to the police?" he asked carefully. "No." "Why not?" "Because the kind of man who kills someone in cold blood isn't afraid of police." Isla pulled back from his touch, standing up, putting distance between them. "He's the kind of man who owns police, who makes people disappear, who has the resources to hunt me down no matter where I hide." She wasn't lying. Every word described Dominic Castellano perfectly. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and certain. "Then stay here, under my protection." "What?" "Stay here, in the guest house. Let me keep you safe while we figure out a permanent solution." The offer was insane. Suicidal. Exactly what she couldn't do. "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because I don't know you. Because it's too much. You saved my life, and I'm grateful, but you're used to handling everything alone." He moved closer again, closing the distance she'd created. "I understand that. But sometimes survival means accepting help from unexpected places." "You don't understand." "I understand better than you think." His hand found her waist, steadying her. "I know what it's like to live looking over your shoulder, to trust no one, to carry secrets that could destroy you if they came to light." His eyes searched hers. "The difference is, I have the power to protect both of us. You don't have to run anymore." Isla's mind raced. This was impossible. Crazy. The worst idea in the history of terrible ideas. Living in the guest house of the man she was hiding from? It was like hiding in a wolf's den. But another part of her, the exhausted, desperate part, whispered that maybe this was the safest place she could be. Right under his nose, where he'd never think to look for a witness. Where she could watch him and know if he ever started to remember. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Think about it here." Dominic's hand remained at her waist, warm through the cashmere sweater. "Give it 1 week. If you're not comfortable after 7 days, I'll help you relocate. New identity, new city, enough money to start fresh somewhere he'll never find you." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because I couldn't save." He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "Because I can save you. And that matters to me." There it was again. The glimpse of something beneath the armor. A wound that hadn't healed. Isla wondered who he'd lost. Who he'd failed to protect. Before she could respond, one of his security team appeared at the edge of the terrace. "Boss." "He's here." Dominic's entire demeanor shifted, the gentle protector disappearing behind cold authority. "Put him in my office. I'll be there in 5 minutes." The man nodded and vanished. Dominic turned back to Isla, his hand still at her waist. "I have business to handle. Think about what I said. Rosa will make sure you have everything you need." "Dominic." He leaned in suddenly, his lips brushing her forehead in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. "You're safe here. I promise you that." Then he was gone, striding toward the main house with the same lethal grace she remembered from that dock. Isla stood frozen on the terrace, her forehead still tingling from his kiss. She'd just made a deal with the devil. Or maybe she'd just found the perfect hiding place. She couldn't tell which. What she did know was that everything had changed the moment Dominic Castellano pulled her from the ocean. And there was no going back to the way things were before. Through the French doors of the main house, She could see shadows moving. Hear raised voices, one of them Dominic's, controlled and dangerous. Whatever business he was handling, it wasn't the kind conducted in boardrooms. Isla should have been terrified. Should have been planning her escape. Instead, she found herself walking back to the guest house, thinking about the way his hand had felt at her waist. The way he'd looked at her like she was something precious worth protecting. The way she'd almost believed him when he said she was safe. The week that followed was the strangest of Isla's life. She lived in the guest house like a princess in a tower, comfortable, protected, and completely trapped. Rosa brought meals, Dominic's security team patrolled the grounds, and every evening, Dominic himself appeared with dinner and conversation. They talked about everything except the things that mattered. He told her about his family's restaurant empire, the legitimate cover for his real business. She told him about her childhood in Texas, carefully editing out any details that could identify her. They discussed books, music, the news. Normal things that felt surreal given who they were to each other. What she saw beneath the surface terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. Dominic was brilliant, sharp, strategic, always 3 moves ahead. He was also capable of shocking tenderness. The way he listened when she spoke. The way he remembered small details, that she preferred tea over coffee, that she loved thunderstorms, that she missed her mother who died when she was 15. And slowly, impossibly, Isla felt herself relaxing. The constant hypervigilance that had defined her existence for 2 years began to ease. She slept through whole nights. She smiled without forcing it. She started to believe maybe, just maybe, she could have this. Safety. Connection. A life that was more than survival. That's when everything fell apart. It was day 8, 1 day past the week she'd promised to decide. Isla woke to the sound of shouting from the main house. Angry voices. Breaking glass. She pulled on jeans and rushed to the window. In the circular driveway, 3 black SUVs were parked at aggressive angles. Men in expensive suits surrounded Dominic, their body language radiating hostility. She recognized one of them from news reports, Marco Vitelli, head of a rival crime family. This was Dominic's world. The real one. Not dinner conversation and gentle touches, but violence and power plays and danger. Isla should have stayed hidden. Should have retreated into the guest house and waited for the storm to pass. Instead, she found herself moving down the stairs, through the garden, drawn by some terrible magnetic pull. She stayed behind a hedge of hibiscus, close enough to hear but hopefully not be seen. "Think you can disrespect my family without consequences?" Vitelli was saying, his face red with rage. "You killed my cousin. My blood. Your cousin was a traitor." Dominic's voice was ice and razors. "He sold information to the feds that could have brought down both our families. I did you a favor by handling it quietly. You don't get to decide who lives and dies in my organization." He was meeting with federal agents on my dock. That made it my business. The dock. Isla's heart stopped. They were talking about the execution she'd witnessed. The traitor who'd begged for his life before Dominic put a bullet in him. "You should have brought it to me first," Vitelli snarled. "That's the code. That's respect. Instead, you acted like you own this city." "I do own this city." Dominic's hand moved inside his jacket, not quite drawing a weapon but making the threat clear. "And if you have a problem with how I run things, we can solve that right now." The tension ratcheted to breaking point. Vitelli's men reached for their guns. Dominic's security team mirrored the movement. In seconds, it would be a bloodbath in the driveway. "Stop." A woman's voice cut through the testosterone. An older woman stepped between the 2 groups, elegant in a black dress, her silver hair swept into a chignon. "Both of you. This accomplishes nothing." "Stay out of this, Sophia," Vitelli growled. "I'm head of the commission, Marco." It's literally my job to be in this. Sofia Marcelo, Isla had seen her photo before. She was the closest thing the families had to neutral leadership. We're not going to war over something that happened 2 years ago. The traitor is dead. It's done. It's not done until it's done. Sofia's voice carried absolute authority. You want to challenge Dominic's decision. Bring it to the full commission. But you don't start a war in a residential driveway at 9 in the morning. Have some dignity. For a moment, Isla thought Vitelli would argue. But slowly, he stepped back. This isn't finished. Yes, it is. Dominic hadn't moved, his hand still inside his jacket. And Marco? If you ever show up at my home without an invitation again, commission or no commission, I'll consider it an act of war. Understand? Vitelli glared, but Tenter novamente vi continuar got back in his SUV. The convoy pulled away, tires spitting gravel. Sofia lingered, speaking quietly with Dominic. Isla couldn't hear their words from her hiding spot, but she saw Dominic's shoulders tighten, saw him nod once, sharply. When Sofia left, Dominic stood alone in the driveway, his security team maintaining their perimeter. He looked tired suddenly, the weight of his crown visible in the set of his shoulders. Then his head turned. His eyes found her hiding spot with unnerving accuracy. Isla. Not a question. A command. Come here. She'd been caught. Isla stepped out from behind the hibiscus, her heart hammering. Dominic's expression was unreadable as she crossed the driveway toward him. "How much did you hear?" he asked quietly. "Enough. There was no point in lying. You killed someone. 2 years ago. On a dock." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, that she'd connected the dots. "Yes. He was a traitor." "Yes. And you did it yourself. Not one of your men." "You." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I don't ask my people to do things I'm not willing to do myself. It's one of my rules." Isla should have been horrified. Should have been running. Instead, she heard herself ask, did he deserve it? He was selling information that would have put dozens of families in prison. Wives, children, everyone would have paid for his betrayal. So yes, he deserved it. You didn't even hesitate. Hesitation gets people killed. In my world, you make the hard choice fast, or the choice gets made for you. He stepped closer, his eyes searching her face. Does this change things? Now that you know what I am. I already knew what you were, Isla said softly. I've always known. Have you? It wasn't a question. Dominic moved even closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Then why aren't you afraid of me? Who says I'm not? Your body language. Your breathing. The way you're standing your ground instead of backing away. His hand came up, fingers grazing her cheek. You should be terrified of me, Isla. Most people are. Most people didn't have you save their life. Is that all I am to you? Your rescuer. The question hung between them, weighted with meaning. Isla's breath caught. She knew the answer. Had known it for days, maybe from the first moment he'd touched her. But saying it out loud would change everything. No, she whispered. That's not all you are. Dominic's eyes darkened. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up toward his. Then what am I? Dangerous. Complicated. Someone I shouldn't want but can't stop thinking about. Isla. Her name was a warning and a prayer. If we cross this line, there's no going back. You need to understand that. I don't do casual. I don't do temporary. If you're mine completely. The possessiveness should have scared her. Instead, it sent heat flooding through her veins. "I've been alone for 2 years," she said. "Running, hiding, surviving. And in 8 days, you've made me feel more alive than I have since." She stopped. Since that night on the dock. Since the night she saw him and started running. "Since when?" Dominic asked, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "Since I learned that living and surviving aren't the same thing." Something shifted in his expression, the last wall coming down. "Then stop surviving. Live. Right here. With me." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was consuming, his mouth claiming hers with an intensity that stole her breath. His hand tightened in her hair, holding her exactly where he wanted her, while his other arm banded around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Isla's hands found his chest, feeling his heart hammering as fast as hers. The world narrowed to this. His taste, his touch, the way he kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "Inside," Dominic said, his voice rough. "Now. Before I forget, we're standing in my driveway where anyone can see." He pulled her toward the main house, through corridors she'd never seen, up a private staircase. His bedroom was masculine and minimalist. Dark wood, white linens, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Dominic pushed the door closed and immediately pulled her back into his arms. This kiss was slower, deeper, his hands exploring the curve of her spine, the shape of her waist. Isla's fingers worked at his tie, then the buttons of his shirt, needing to touch skin. When his phone rang, he ignored it. It rang again. And again. "Dominic," Isla pulled back slightly. "That might be important." "Nothing is more important than this." But he pulled out the phone, glanced at the screen, and swore quietly in Italian. "I have to take this. It's the commission. Give me 2 minutes." He stepped onto the balcony, his voice dropping to business mode. Isla stood in his bedroom, her lips still swollen from his kisses, and tried to process what had just happened. She'd kissed the man she was supposed to be hiding from. The man whose secret she carried. The man who would kill her if he knew the truth. And God help her, she wanted to do it again. Through the glass doors, she could see Dominic pacing, one hand raking through his hair in frustration. Whatever the commission was telling him, he didn't like it. Isla's eyes wandered around the room, taking in the details. A photo on the dresser caught her attention. Dominic younger, laughing, his arm around a beautiful woman with dark hair and kind eyes. Isla moved closer. The woman looked familiar somehow. And then her blood turned to ice. She recognized that face. Not from knowing her, but from news reports. From missing person posters. From the night on the dock. This was the woman Dominic had been trying to save 2 years ago. The woman he'd failed to protect. The reason he'd executed the traitor. His wife. Isla's hand trembled as she picked up the frame. On the back, an inscription. "Maria, forever my heart. Forever my love. Maria Castellano. Killed 2 years ago by the traitor who'd sold information to the feds." The traitor Dominic had hunted down and executed on that dock while Isla watched from the shadows. She wasn't just a random witness. She'd witnessed Dominic avenging his murdered wife. The balcony door opened. Dominic stepped back inside, his expression dark. "The commission wants a meeting tonight. They're concerned about—" He stopped, seeing Isla holding the photo. "Where did you get that?" "Your dresser." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." Isla set it down carefully. "Was she your wife?" "Yes." The word was sharp, final. "She was murdered 2 years ago. The man I killed on the dock set up the ambush that got her killed." "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be honest." Dominic crossed the room in 3 strides, his eyes locked on hers. "You said you witnessed a murder 2 years ago. When exactly? What month?" Isla's mind raced. She couldn't lie now, he'd see through it. But the truth would destroy everything. June. Late June. What date? The 23rd. Dominic went completely still. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. Maria died on June 20th. I executed her killer on June 23rd. At approximately 11 p.m. on the private dock behind the warehouse district. Isla's heart stopped. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. You weren't just any witness, Dominic said, each word falling like a hammer. You were there. You saw me kill him. You've known who I was this entire time. Dominic. Don't. He backed away from her, his expression transforming into something cold and dangerous. Don't say my name. Don't explain. Don't lie. His hand moved to the gun at his waist. Instinct, threat. You've been playing me from the beginning. Getting close to me, making me care about you, when you've been sitting on information that could destroy me. No, I wasn't playing you. I didn't plan any of this. Then why didn't you tell me? The question was a roar. 8 days. 8 days you've been here, letting me protect you, letting me... He stopped himself, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Did you think you could blackmail me? Is that the game? There's no game. Tears burned Isla's eyes. I was terrified. I've been running for 2 years because I thought if you knew I was there, you'd kill me. And then you saved me, and I didn't know what to do. You could have told me the truth. So you could what? Thank me for my honesty and let me go. Isla's voice broke. You just said it yourself. If you're yours completely. You don't let go. And I'm the only witness to a murder you committed. What exactly did you think would happen if I confessed? Dominic stared at her, chest heaving. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The air between them crackled with betrayal and rage and something far more dangerous. Get out, he said finally. Get out of my house. Now. Dominic. I said get out. The roar brought his security team running. 2 men appeared in the doorway, hands on their weapons. Dominic pointed at Isla. Escort her off the property. Make sure she takes nothing but what she came with. If she comes back, arrest her for trespassing. Boss, one of the men started. Do it. Now. Isla felt hands on her arms. Not rough, but firm. She was being pulled backward, out of his bedroom, away from him. She tried to meet his eyes one more time, but Dominic had turned his back to her, staring out at the bay, his shoulders rigid with fury. Please, she whispered. Let me explain. You had 8 days to explain. You chose deception. His voice was ice. I don't give second chances to people who betray me. Get her out of my sight. They pulled her through the house, down the stairs, across the driveway. Isla's legs moved on autopilot, her mind numb with shock. At the guest house, they gave her 5 minutes to gather her few belongings, the clothes she'd arrived in, nothing more. Then the gates opened, and she was standing on the street outside Dominic Castellano's fortress, alone again. The sun was setting, painting Miami's sky in shades of blood and fire. Isla started walking, her vision blurred by tears she refused to let fall. She'd survived 2 years on her own. She'd survive this too. But as the gates closed behind her with a definitive clang, she realized something that made her chest ache. For 8 days, she'd forgotten what it felt like to be alone. Dominic had given her safety, connection, something that felt dangerously close to love. And she'd destroyed it with a secret she'd been too afraid to share. Behind those walls, Dominic Castellano stood at his bedroom window, watching her small figure disappear down the street. His hand was still on his gun. His heart was still racing with rage and betrayal. And beneath it all, a voice whispered that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. But Dominic Castellano didn't make mistakes. He made decisions. And this decision was final. At least, that's what he told himself as he watched her vanish into the Miami twilight, taking something vital with her that he hadn't even known he still possessed. His ability to trust. His hope for something beyond revenge and power. His heart. 3 days. That's how long Dominic lasted before the rage turned into something worse. He'd buried himself in work, meetings with the commission, negotiations with suppliers, a dozen crisis situations that required his immediate attention. He slept in his office, avoided his bedroom where her scent still lingered on his sheets, and told himself he'd made the right choice. But every night, he dreamed of her drowning. Of pulling her from the waves and this time being too late. Of her small body floating in black water while he screamed her name. He woke on the 4th morning covered in cold sweat, his heart hammering, and finally admitted the truth. He'd been wrong. Rosa appeared with coffee and the look of someone who'd been waiting for him to come to his senses. "Are you ready to talk about her yet?" "No." "Too bad. We're talking." Rosa set down the coffee with more force than necessary. "That girl wasn't playing you. I saw the way she looked at you, like you were the answer to a prayer she'd stopped believing in. And you threw her out like garbage. She lied to me for 8 days. She survived for 2 years. What was she supposed to do? Waltz up to the man she saw commit murder and say, 'Hello, remember me?'" Rosa shook her head. She was terrified, Dominic. And you gave her 8 days of feeling safe before ripping it away. The words hit harder than Dominic wanted to admit. He picked up his phone, the burner number Isla had given him during her stay. He'd tried calling it 17 times. It was disconnected. She'd disappeared. Again. "I need to find her," he said quietly. "Good luck. That girl knows how to vanish." Rosa headed for the door, then paused. "But if you do find her, remember something. She kept your secret for 2 years. Never tried to use it against you, never sold the information, never went to the police. She could have destroyed you 100 times over. But she didn't. Maybe ask yourself why." After Rosa left, Dominic stood at his window overlooking the bay. He knew why. The same reason he'd kissed her in his driveway. The same reason he'd brought her into his home, his life, his bed. Because from the moment he'd pulled her from the ocean, she'd been his. And he'd been hers. 2 damaged people recognizing something fundamental in each other. And he'd destroyed it because his pride couldn't handle being deceived. His phone rang. Marco, his head of security. "Boss, we found something. The lifeguard station where she worked. There's footage from the night you pulled her from the ocean." "Send it to me." 10 minutes later, Dominic watched the grainy security footage. There was Isla, sitting on the lifeguard tower, staring at the ocean. For 20 minutes, she just sat there. Not checking her phone. Not doing anything except existing in that moment of isolated despair. Then she climbed down. Walked to the water's edge. And kept walking. The footage quality wasn't good enough to see her expression, but he didn't need to. He remembered the look in her eyes when he'd asked if she was trying to end things or escape them. The way she'd said, "I don't know any more." She hadn't been trying to get close to him. She'd been trying to disappear permanently. And he'd saved her. Given her a reason to stay alive. Then crushed her for the crime of being afraid. Dominic grabbed his jacket and keys. "Marco, get me everything you can on Isla Rivera. Real name, real background, everything. I want to know who she was before she started running." "Already on it, boss. But there's something you should see first." Marco led him to the security office. On the screen was footage from Dominic's own property, the cameras that covered the guest house. Marco pulled up a specific timestamp, 2:47 a.m., 2 nights before their confrontation. The footage showed Isla sitting on the guesthouse patio, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the main house. At Dominic's bedroom window. She sat there for over an hour, not moving, just watching. When she finally went back inside, even through the grainy footage, Dominic could see her wiping tears from her face. "There's more," Marco said quietly. He pulled up another timestamp. This one showed Isla in the guesthouse kitchen, making coffee. She'd picked up her phone, probably to call someone, then set it down. Picked it up again. Set it down. Finally, she'd thrown it across the room, covered her face with her hands, and her shoulders had shaken with silent sobs. The timestamp was from the morning after their first kiss. She wasn't planning anything, Marco said. She was falling apart. Whatever she was trying to decide, it was eating her alive. Dominic's chest tightened. He'd been so focused on the betrayal that he hadn't considered what those 8 days must have cost her. The constant fear of discovery. The guilt of deception. The impossible choice between survival and honesty. "Find her," he ordered. "I don't care what it takes. Find her and bring her back. Boss, if she doesn't want to be found, then we make her want to be found." Dominic was already moving toward the door. "Start with her apartment. Check every contact, every lead. And put the word out on the street. Anyone who sees her, anyone who helps her, they answer to me." It took 36 hours. 36 hours of Dominic's organization turning Miami inside out, checking bus stations, train stations, airports, bribing hotel clerks and landlords, following every thin thread. Finally, Marco called. "We found her. Motel off Highway 1. She's booked under a different name, paid cash, but the desk clerk recognized her photo." Dominic was in his car before Marco finished the sentence. The motel was exactly what he expected. Cheap, anonymous, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Room 14, second floor. Dominic took the stairs 2 at a time, his security team hanging back at his gesture. He knocked. Once. Twice. The door opened a crack, chain still attached. Isla's face appeared in the gap, exhausted, wary, beautiful. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "How did you find me? I own half this city. You think you can hide from me?" Dominic kept his voice level with effort. "Open the door, Isla." "So you can what? Have me arrested? Threaten me into silence. So I can apologize." The chain didn't move, but her expression shifted, confusion replacing wariness. "You came here to apologize?" "I came here to tell you I was wrong. To tell you I understand why you didn't tell me. To tell you that—" He stopped, choosing his words carefully. "To tell you that I've spent 4 days trying to convince myself I made the right choice. And I can't. Because the only thing I'm certain of is that I want you back." "Dominic, I know what I am. I know what I do. I don't apologize for it because in my world, violence is survival. But I should never have made you pay for being afraid of me. You had every reason to keep that secret." He pressed his palm against the door, wishing he could touch her. "And the fact that you kept it for 2 years, never used it, never weaponized it, that tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Isla was quiet for a long moment. Then the chain rattled, and the door opened fully. She stood in the doorway wearing the same clothes he'd seen her in days ago, her hair pulled back, her eyes red-rimmed. "I was going to tell you," she said quietly. "That day, when you kissed me, I was going to confess everything. And then your phone rang, and I saw Maria's photo, and I realized," her voice cracked, "I realized you'd lost so much already. And I didn't want to be another person who betrayed you." "You didn't betray me. You survived me. I lied to you for 8 days. You protected yourself for 2 years. There's a difference. Dominic stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. I'm asking you to come back. Not because I'm trying to control the situation or eliminate a threat, but because those 8 days were the first time since Maria died that I felt like living instead of just existing. Tears welled in Isla's eyes. You scare me. I know. Not because of what you do. Because of how much I want this. Want you. She wiped her eyes roughly. I've spent 2 years afraid to want anything. And then you pulled me from the ocean and everything changed. Then stop running. Stay. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in both hands. Stay and let me protect you. Stay and let me prove that what we have is worth the risk. Stay because 8 days wasn't enough. Not even close. What if someone finds out I saw? No one will. That secret dies with us. I promise you that. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But more than that, I promise that anyone who tries to hurt you goes through me first. And I don't lose, Isla. Not when it matters. This is crazy, she whispered. We barely know each other. I know you walked into the ocean looking for peace. I know you've been alone so long you forgot what it feels like to trust someone. I know that when I kiss you, you kiss me back like you're drowning and I'm air. He leaned his forehead against hers. I know enough. Dominic. Say yes. Take the risk. Let me prove that this time you don't have to choose between survival and living. You can have both. Isla's hands came up to grip his wrists, holding him in place. For a moment, she just breathed him in, expensive cologne and danger and impossible promises. Then slowly, she nodded. Okay. Okay. Yes. I'll come back. She pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. But I have conditions. A smile tugged at the corner of Dominic's mouth, the first real smile in 4 days. Name them. No more secrets. If something's dangerous or important, you tell me. I'm not some fragile thing you need to protect from the truth. Agreed. And when I'm scared, which will probably be often, you don't get angry. You be patient. You remember that trusting you is the hardest thing I've ever done. Done. He pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her waist. Anything else? Isla looked up at him, and something shifted in her expression. Vulnerability becoming strength. Love me the way I saw you loved Maria. That kind of fierce, all-consuming love that makes you dangerous to anyone who threatens it. I want that. I want to be worth that. Dominic's breath caught. Isla. I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. But I've spent 2 years just surviving, and I'm tired. I want to live. I want to feel. And if I'm taking this risk, if I'm trusting you with my life and my secrets, then I want all of you. Not the controlled version. All of it. For a moment, Dominic couldn't speak. This small, fierce woman who'd been terrified of him 4 days ago was standing in a cheap motel room demanding everything he had to give. And the crazy part was, he wanted to give it to her. You already are, he said finally. From the moment I pulled you from that water, you were worth that. I just didn't know it until I lost you. He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promises he intended to keep. Isla melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and for the first time in 4 days, Dominic felt like he could breathe again. When they finally pulled apart, he pressed his lips to her forehead. Let's go home. Home, Isla repeated, testing the word. I haven't had one of those in a long time. You have one now. He laced his fingers through hers, anchoring her to him. And I dare anyone to try and take it from you. They left the motel together, Isla carrying nothing but the small bag she'd brought. Dominic's SUV waited in the parking lot, Marco and the security team maintaining a respectful distance. As they drove back toward Coral Gables, Isla's hand stayed locked in Dominic's, her thumb tracing circles on his palm. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now, you move into the main house. With me. Where I can keep you safe." "Your bedroom?" "The one where you threw me out." "Different bedroom. One without memories we need to replace." He brought her hand to his lips. "Fresh start. For both of us." Isla nodded, then smiled slightly. "Rosa is going to say, 'I told you so,' isn't she?" "Repeatedly. 4 months. Possibly years." Dominic smiled back. "And she'll be right. I was an idiot. A very powerful, very dangerous idiot. The worst kind." They pulled through the gates of his estate, and Isla felt something loosen in her chest. This was insane. Reckless. Possibly the worst decision she'd ever made. But as Dominic helped her out of the SUV and pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like a fortress, Isla realized she didn't care. For 2 years, she'd chosen survival over everything else. Now she was choosing to live. And if that meant trusting the most dangerous man in Miami with her heart and her secrets, then so be it. Some risks were worth taking. Some men were worth the danger. And some loves were worth dying for, or better yet, worth finally learning to live for. 5 years later, the terrace overlooking Biscayne Bay had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. White roses climbed the pergola, soft music drifted from hidden speakers, and Miami's sunset painted the sky in impossible shades of gold and pink. Isla stood at the railing, watching boats glide across the water, and felt arms wrap around her waist from behind. She leaned back into Dominic's embrace, breathing in the familiar scent of him. Home and safety and everything she'd stopped believing in until he'd pulled her from the ocean. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her hair. "That night. The water. How different everything would be if you hadn't been there. I'll always be there." His hand splayed across her stomach, protective and possessive. "That's not going to change." Isla smiled, placing her hands over his. "Good. Because in about 7 months, this is going to get a lot more complicated." Dominic went very still. Then slowly, carefully, he turned her to face him, his eyes searching hers. "Isla." "Surprise," she whispered, her smile widening at his stunned expression. "You're going to be a father." For a moment, Dominic couldn't speak. His hands trembled slightly as they framed her face, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You're sure?" "Very sure. I saw the doctor yesterday. That's where I was when you thought I was at the spa." "A baby." He said it like he was testing the word, trying to make it real. Then suddenly he was kissing her, fierce and tender and full of joy that made her heart overflow. When he pulled back, he was smiling in a way she'd never seen before. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. "We're having a baby." "We are." "Are you? Is this okay?" "I know we never really talked about." "Okay." Dominic laughed, the sound carrying across the terrace. "Isla, you just gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. A future. A family." He dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead against her stomach. "Thank you. For coming back. For staying. For this." Isla's fingers threaded through his hair, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I love you. So much it terrifies me sometimes." "Good." He stood, pulling her close again. "Terror means you're alive. Means you're feeling. Means you stopped just surviving. You taught me that. You taught me that loving someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you unstoppable." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "Nothing touches you. Nothing touches our family. Ever." From the house, Rosa's voice called out. Dinner's ready. And if you two don't come eat, I'm feeding everything to the security team. Isla laughed, wiping her eyes. We should go before she makes good on that threat. But Dominic held her for one more moment, his hand resting over where their child grew. Thank you for drowning that night. That's a weird thing to thank someone for. Thank you for giving me the chance to save you. For letting me prove that some monsters can learn to be men. He smiled. For choosing to live. Thank you for teaching me how. They walked back toward the house together, Dominic's hand never leaving hers. Inside, Rosa had prepared a feast, authentic Italian food that filled the air with the scent of home. The dining table was set for 10, family, chosen and earned. Marco arrived first, followed by Dominic's sister Sophia with her husband. Others filtered in, people who'd become Isla's family over the past 5 years. People who protected her as fiercely as Dominic did, who'd welcomed her into their dangerous world and helped her find her place in it. As they sat down to eat, Dominic stood, raising his glass. I have an announcement. 5 years ago, I pulled a woman from the ocean thinking I was saving her life. What I didn't know was that she was saving mine. He looked at Isla, his eyes full of everything they'd survived and built together. And now, she's giving me the greatest gift I could imagine. We're having a baby. The table erupted. Cheers, congratulations, Rosa crying happy tears and declaring she'd known it the moment she saw Isla's face. Sophia immediately started planning the nursery, while Marco solemnly promised to increase security protocols. Through it all, Isla held Dominic's hand beneath the table, her heart so full it ached. She'd gone into the ocean looking for an ending. Instead, she'd found a beginning. That night, after everyone left and the house fell quiet, Dominic and Isla stood on their private balcony overlooking the bay. The water was calm, moonlight dancing across the surface. So different from that night 5 years ago when the ocean had tried to claim her. Do you ever regret it? Dominic asked quietly. Coming back here? Choosing this life? Isla looked up at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd taught her that strength came in many forms. That love could be fierce and protective without being cage. That the people others feared could be the safest harbor in the storm. Never, she said. Not for a single second. Not even when my world gets too dark? Especially not then. Because when your world gets dark, I get to be your light. She rose on her toes to kiss him. We save each other, Dominic. That's what we do. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her as completely as that first night when he dragged her from the waves. Always, he promised. In every way that matters. And he did. For the rest of their lives, through every storm and every calm, every danger and every peace, Dominic Castellano kept his promise. He protected her, loved her, made sure she never felt alone again. And Isla, who'd once walked into the ocean looking for silence, learned that some voices were worth listening to. Some risks were worth taking. And some men, even dangerous, complicated, impossible men, were worth trusting with every secret, every fear, and every hope you carried in your heart. Together, they built a life that was more than survival. They built a family, a future, a love that proved redemption was possible for everyone, even those who'd stopped believing they deserved it. And sometimes, late at night when Isla couldn't sleep, she'd stand at the window and look out at the ocean. No longer a place of ending, but a reminder of where everything began. The night the MAFIA boss saved a drowning girl, not knowing she held the secret that could destroy him. The night that secret became the foundation of everything they'd build. The night 2 broken people found each other in the darkness and chose, against all odds and reason, to let in the light.